In the land of Uz, long before the scrolls of history were written, there lived a man named Job. He was a figure of quiet power, blameless, upright, a man who feared God and turned away from evil. His life overflowed with blessings. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters, fields brimming with livestock, 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, 500 donkeys, and a household so vast he was called the greatest of all men in the East. Each day, Job watched over his children with a father's careful heart. When they feasted together, he would rise early the next morning to offer burnt sacrifices, one for each child, just in case any had sinned or cursed God in their hearts. Job's life was not only wealthy, it was holy. But far above the earth, in the unseen realm of heaven, a meeting was held. The sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and among them came Satan, the accuser. The Lord looked upon him and asked, "Where have you come from?" Satan answered, "From roaming throughout the earth." Then the Lord said, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is none like him, blameless and upright, fearing God and shunning evil." Satan's lips curled. "Does Job fear God for nothing? Haven't you placed a hedge around him, his household, and everything he has? Stretch out your hand and strike what he owns. He will curse you to your face." The Lord's reply was slow and weighty. "Very well. Everything he has is in your hands, but on the man himself do not lay a finger." And so, without warning, calamity swept in like a dark wind. On a single terrible day, as Job sat in peace, a messenger came, breathless. The oxen were plowing and the donkeys grazing beside them when the Sabeans attacked. They killed the servants and took the animals. Before the words had finished echoing, another man rushed in. Fire from heaven fell and burned up the sheep and the servants watching them. A third man staggered in behind him. The Chaldeans raided in 3 bands and took the camels. More servants are dead. Then the final messenger arrived, his voice trembling. "Your sons and daughters were feasting when a mighty wind struck the house. It collapsed. They are all dead." Job stood in silence. His world had shattered. He tore his robe, shaved his head, and fell to the ground, not in anger, but in worship. "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord." But Satan was not finished. Once again he stood before God, and again the Lord said, "Have you considered my servant Job? Still he holds fast to his integrity, though you incited me to ruin him without cause." Satan said, "Skin for skin. A man will give all he has for his own life. Stretch out your hand and strike his flesh and bones, and he will surely curse you." The Lord answered, "Very well. He is in your hands, but spare his life." And so Satan struck Job with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head. Job sat in ashes, scraping his skin with broken pottery. His wife, seeing the ruin of him, said bitterly, "Are you still holding on to your integrity? Curse God and die." But Job, even in the torment of flesh and soul, whispered, "Shall we accept good from God and not trouble?" Still he did not sin with his lips. Word of his suffering spread, and from distant lands came his friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar. They barely recognized him. For 7 days and 7 nights they sat with him in silence, overwhelmed by grief. But when they spoke, their words wounded instead of healing. One after another they accused Job. "Surely," they said, "God would not punish a righteous man. You must have sinned. Confess, repent." Job refused. He clung to his innocence. His voice rose in anguish. "Why was I born? Let the day perish on which I was conceived. I have no peace, no rest. I am weary of life." Yet even in his despair, Job did not curse God. He pleaded for justice, for answers. He asked to speak to God himself. Then a younger man, Elihu, who had listened silently, spoke with passion. He was angry, not just at the friends for their false counsel, but at Job for justifying himself rather than God. God is greater than mortal man, he said. He speaks in ways we do not understand. He wounds, yes, but he also heals. As Elihu spoke, the winds began to gather. Then the storm came. From the whirlwind, God answered Job. But he gave no explanation, only questions. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Who shut the sea behind doors when it burst from the womb? Have you commanded the morning, or walked in the recesses of the deep? God described the vast mysteries of creation, the wildness of the world, the freedom of beasts, the glory of the stars. Can you tame the behemoth? Can you leash the leviathan? God's voice roared like thunder, and Job saw, truly saw, how small he was beside the Maker of all things. Job fell silent. I spoke once, he said, but I will not speak again. I have uttered things too wonderful for me to know. My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Therefore I repent in dust and ashes. And then, in an act of divine justice, God turned his anger toward Job's friends. You have not spoken the truth about me as my servant Job has, he said. He commanded them to bring offerings and told Job to pray for them. Job did, and the Lord restored him, twice as much as he had before. His flocks doubled, his wealth returned. Once again he had 7 sons and 3 daughters, the daughters the most beautiful in the land. He gave them inheritance alongside their brothers. Job lived 140 more years, long enough to see his children's children to the 4th generation. And then he died, old and full of days. But the story did not die with him. It lingers, like a whisper in the whirlwind, asking, will you trust the God you cannot always understand?